Today, we're exposing the truth about 5 popular mortgage payoff tips that could actually be holding you back. These common strategies might seem helpful, but they often fail to maximize your financial potential. Stay tuned as we debunk these myths and reveal what you should be doing instead. So the first tip is make extra payments. Why doesn't this work?
Specifically, we're talking about bi-weekly payments. See, a lot of times you can't just arbitrarily decide to make a bi-weekly payment on your mortgage. You have to actually apply for it. You actually have to opt into another contract where you are allowed to then make those bi-weekly payments. But what does that mean? Well, now you're opting into a contract, meaning you can't bounce back and forth. You can't decide to make a monthly payment today and then a bi-weekly payment next week. And here's the truth about bi-weekly payments. If you add them all up, they equate to one extra payment. So why not just make one extra payment instead of opting into another contract, which means now you're held to the standard of completing these biweekly payments on a consistent basis. Oh, and guess what? The biweekly payment that you're making, that biweekly payment isn't even being applied when you make that payment. What the bank is actually doing is they're going to hold that biweekly payment till you submit the second biweekly payment until they have a full month's payment to be able to release, and then it's going to be applied. So guess what the bank is doing with that biweekly payment while they're waiting for you to accumulate the monthly?
What are they doing?
They're lending it back to you. They're charging others interest on it. They're making a spread, an arbitrage on that dollar amount. So they're using it where, again, I thought the goal was your financial growth. But guess whose financial growth you're actually helping?
The bank. So why doesn't anybody talk about this?
So who benefits from talking about it? Think about it. The Latin term for mortgage, or the Latin meaning for mortgage, is death pledge. The mortgage is really just a binding contract, which benefits who? It benefits the bank. So why would a bank share with you some actions that you should or shouldn't take to help improve the situation when in truth, you being locked into this mortgage only benefits the bank?
So tip number 2 is to round up your payments. You've heard this one before, right?
Yeah, rounding up the payments to me is similar to, I'll call it keep the change that a lot of us have in our checking account. Whereas, hey, I've got this mortgage payment of $1,486, and instead of $1,486, I'm going to pay $1,500. And then that extra that I'm paying onto my mortgage helps drop down the principal. Sounds awesome, but it's an extremely slow process. And during that process, as you're accumulating that principal amount that's dropping on your mortgage, what else could you have been doing with that dollar amount to help grow it faster? Because mortgages are closed-ended, your flexibility to be able to use those additional funds are limited next to not being able to use at all, which leads us to tip number 3.
Number 3 is applying windfalls to your mortgage.
Now, are you noticing a theme here? Because like applying a windfall to your mortgage sounds great. Like, yes, there's a certain amount of your principal that's going to be addressed when you do that. Like, that's awesome. But when you apply that windfall just meaning, let's say you got your tax return or some inheritance or bonus, and you're going to dump it all into your mortgage. The minute you do that, yes, there is a change in the balance on your mortgage. But did the monthly payment change? Were you now placed in a position to where the burden is any less? What you did was applied your lump sum would impact your flexibility and your ability to leverage those funds on a consistent basis to be able to put them or invest them elsewhere. They're tied up, they're locked into this product. So all you did was, again, assist the bank in being able to help their financial growth. But as far as you, it impacted your ability to do much because you have zero access to those funds once they are sitting in your mortgage. Remember, what's the goal? The goal is financial growth. How are you growing financially? Yes, you're putting yourself in a position to pay your home off faster. Like, that's awesome. And once that home is paid off faster, yes, maybe there's action that you can take. But from a financial growth perspective in this moment, you only assisted one institution, and that's the bank.
Number 4 is refinance to a shorter term.
Now, what does that mean? If you got a 30-year mortgage, so I'm going to refinance to a 15. But did you know you can refinance from a 15-year mortgage to a 10? While that may address a large amount of interest that you're paying to the bank, so refinancing is beneficial in reducing the amount of interest that you're paying to the bank. Like, that's awesome. But you didn't refinance for free. There was a cost to refinance. And don't forget that clock that you have to pay that home off has now restarted. That amortization schedule is now started from the beginning, meaning all of the interest, the majority of the interest is pushed to the front of this mortgage, whether it's 10 or 15 year. Once you refi, the clock restarts and all of that interest is pushed to the front. Again, who are you truly assisting when you refi? Yes, you are putting yourself in a position to reduce the overall amount of interest being spent, but there was a cost up front and you're pushing majority of that interest to the front of your loan, which means
any reduction in payments just got eaten up by all of those fees. Tip number 5 is cut unnecessary expenses.
Cutting expenses is absolutely the right thing to do, because when cutting expenses, what are you doing? You're increasing your cash flow. So having those extra dollars and being able to put those dollars to work is the right thing to do as far as your financial growth. But when you're dumping them into your mortgage, what in truth is happening here? You're destroying your flexibility and have the liquidity to be able to put that money to work elsewhere.
So what should you do instead?
And that's the part. I thought financial growth was the goal. Well, if financial growth is the goal, what part of putting extra dollars into your mortgage improves your financial growth or your ability to grow financially?
If paying off your mortgage as fast as possible is your goal, it seems like these tips would help you. But is that truly your goal?
A better way of going about it, or another approach, might be to leverage and or use a home equity line of credit. And notice, I'm not mentioning whether you use a first or a second position, because to me, just having a line of credit in general allows you to do several things. One, it allows you to dump as much cash flow as possible into that line of credit and then leverage that line of credit to do what you want, even if it's pay off your mortgage. But ultimately, it gives you flexibility. It gives you liquidity. It gives you full liquidity and access to those funds the minute you dump that extra cash value into it. So it's immediately accessible by debit card, which means you can then now take those funds and do some other investment externally or outside of your traditional means to help grow cash value faster. Then you can take that growth and dump it right back into that line of credit to be able to reduce that balance and then go out and do it again. So it allows you to get multiple uses out of the same dollar while also investing externally to improve your financial health.
But sometimes people think that they have a HELOC and they don't.
Some paint themselves as a line of credit that's open-ended, but a lot of times they're just big credit cards. Doing your homework or doing your research on understanding how this vehicle is actually able to be used, how flexible is it? Is it treated like a credit card or is it treated like a full checking account? And if so, what is my accessibility? What is the cost? Meaning, is it a principal and interest payment? Is it an interest-only payment? You want to be able to understand how you can or can't use this vehicle to be able to accomplish your goal. With a home equity line of credit, the more funds you put into it, the more accessible those funds are to be used externally to help grow things financially. So the more you put into a home equity line of credit, the lower the balance. The lower the balance, the less interest you pay. The less interest you pay, the smaller the payment. Ultimately just meaning there's more room available for you to be able to use and go do other things. It would be great, it would be awesome if mortgage functioned that way, but it does not. The more you put into a mortgage, yeah, the balance drops, but nothing else changes in this process. And nor can you get those funds that you put in out. So what happens if there's an emergency? Like, where's your access to not just being able to have cash flow to be able to go invest and improve financial growth or financial health, but what happens if there's an emergency, if there's some twist or some turn in your household and it needs to be addressed? Well, having a home equity line of credit accessible to you and understanding how to use it, this can now serve as not just a checking account to pay things, it can also serve as a savings account in case emergencies occur to be able to access and use.
So, how do you leverage your HELOC to build wealth while crushing debt? Well, this next video is a step-by-step walkthrough of how to do just that. And if you found value, don't forget to like this video before you go. See you there.